Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for this latest episode of Korn Ferry Live. Once again, we're going to be talking about those topics that have the biggest impact on business leaders today. It's always a great opportunity for me to learn something new, and I think you might too. For you first timers out there today, please use the chat. All questions are good questions. Let's really put our experts to the test. And whilst we're talking about first timers, is this your first time today? This is a safe space. Where have you been anyway? Let us know if you're a newbie or a regular, or maybe where are you today? Stick it in the chat. So what is our topic for today? Well, today we're going to chat about what drives growth in organizations most. Is it tech or is it talent? Or maybe a combination of the two? What do you think? Let me know. You guessed it, in the chat. Hope you're getting the message by now. Chat is our friend. Embrace it, people. It's what LinkedIn Live was made for. This topic came from our research on the world's most admired companies for 2024. You might have joined us for a session on that a couple of weeks back. So before we get stuck in, let's get into those intros. I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Korn Ferry, and today I'm joined by Sarah Jensen-Clayton, Senior Client Partner with Korn Ferry Consulting, leading the firm's culture and change capability in North America. In addition to Sarah, we also have Will Schumachers, Senior Client Partner and Head of Global Consumer Consulting, as well as living the dream down there in Cornwall. I am so jealous. Welcome, Sarah and Will.
Thanks, Darren. Good to be here.
Thank you, Darren.
See you.
Yes, it's a great day here. It's a bit wet and misty as it is in this part of the country most of the time. So,
well, that makes me feel a little bit better. I won't bring my paddle board down quite so soon. Okay, so let's jump straight in because I know this is going to be a busy one, I think. So following our big reveal of the 2024 rankings of the world's most admired companies earlier this month, we published new research on their growth strategies. Findings showed a focus on tech innovation and adoption will be essential, but paradoxically, 82% of those execs also responded that talent, their people, is even more important for growth. So Sarah, let's kick off with you on this one. Why is talent so critical to drive growth for those companies who say they're focused on technology innovation?
Well, thanks, Darren. I think I should probably start by saying that both tech and talent are critical growth drivers. And in fact, the organizations that are growing the most are the ones that have figured out kind of the sweet spot or the interplay between those two, so that technology is making people better and people are making tech better. But I do want to answer your very provocative question, which is why the talent over tech finding. And I think there are probably a few things that go into that. First of all, tech is only as good as the people that use it, right? So you can invest in the most sophisticated AI infrastructure out there. And if your people don't have the right skill sets and mindsets to really engage with it, it's not going to deliver its value, right? So in that way, tech is people dependent, right? There are a couple other things that I think are relevant here too. One is that when you're developing a growth strategy, it requires, it's a strategic endeavor, right? So humans have strategic capacity. And that's not to say that AI doesn't. There is a lot of great insight and data that AI can provide to a strategy development process. But the reality is there are still some things that humans are better at, right? So when it comes to ultimate decision-making and maybe landing on some of those tough trade-offs, humans are going to be better at imagination, innovation. They're going to be better at factoring in moral and ethical considerations. They're more self-aware. And those are some of the capabilities that you do need when you're designing a growth strategy. I think the last thing, Darren, I'll comment on is, talent is not only needed for the strategy piece, it's also needed for execution. So if you look at the top growth strategies for the world's most admired companies from the same study you mentioned, the two that they are most focused on, one is innovating new products and services, and the second is enhancing the customer experience. And both of those really require, a heavy human quotient. There are other growth strategies on their list that are, more readily tackled by AI, but they're not as high priority for the world's most admired companies, at least not right now. So I think when you take all of that together, you kind of start to see why talent is really top of mind for the execs at the world's most admired companies.
Absolutely, that's great. And Will, anything to build on that?
Yeah, no, I think they obviously great points that Sarah made. But I think we also need to realize that we live in a time of some economic uncertainty, and that has an effect on how talent actually embraces that tech. People are worried about job security in many organizations, and we've seen that in 2023. Some of the skills, some people feel that, especially with AI, that their skills might be superseded, or they suddenly might not be seen as skilled as they really are, because AI actually comes with stronger answers or more diverse answers. And if you're in the creative or art world, what's AI going to do? Is this going to take away my magic that I have, that kind of artful thing? I was with a senior leader in one of the biggest advertising firms, globally, and they are really trying to understand how AI, for example, is affecting the different parts of their organization, and why people are not embracing it, and what they can do to kind of get the right talent in place to drive that. So, for example, in the production part of their business, it's all about productivity. So that obviously a lot of people in that function go, what's this going to do to my job, etc. Now, on the creative side, if you're an advertising agent, that's, your creativity is what you get paid for. So what's AI going to do in that space? Is it going to enhance my job, make me even stronger, make me better? Or so there's lots of challenges as well. And especially, I think, in times when economically people are a little bit more worried, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for talent to truly embrace tech at times. Gotcha.
Great. And just a shout out, get the questions in. We don't want to be getting to the end of the show and then suddenly all the questions come in and we run out of time. So please don't forget that. So building on all of that, I think it's no surprise that tech talent is in a short supply at the moment. So how do organizations ensure they have the right people with the right skills to deliver to their own tech strategies? Will, maybe you can kick that one off.
Yeah, I think, Darren, it is a major challenge. If we look at some of the data, I think 80% of CEOs are seeing a gap in employee skills as one of the biggest threats that they see for growth for the coming few years. I think there's probably 3 steps that people can take. One is the external talent acquisition, right? So bring people in from the outside. It's obviously a very quick and the quickest way to get to that talent, but it can be expensive. It can be fairly time consuming at the same time. But when you do that, you have to make sure you land these people well. So it's not just bringing people in your existing structure, but you might need a different org structure. You might need different KPIs for these people. I remember in my previous role, I was at Procter & Gamble at the beginning of my career. They brought in design as a new skill set at the time. And they really had to bring people in from the outside, quite a big group of them. And they made them report to quite senior people. So they had that kind of cover for the first few years. So we could really embed that kind of capability. And it became part of doing business, rather than trying to pretend we always had this and just expect it to work from the start. So that's one. I think the other one is upskilling, reskilling. So take people that, are probably in, I wouldn't say redundant jobs, but jobs that probably where they won't grow further. Can we reskill them into some of these new tech spaces? Or upskilling some of the people that have quite an affinity with technology, and how can we upskill them quickly to take some of these critical roles? The other thing, which again is interesting, is, and maybe a little bit strange, is exchange programs. I've seen some of our clients that are probably in a more traditional industry doing exchange programs with some of the new tech companies, some of the Silicon Valleys, the Amazons, the Googles this world, where they send 10 of their employees for a year to work in this new industry, in the tech industry, and have the tech industry people spend a year in, call it, the more traditional industries. And I think they'll learn about each other's industry and really see where the opportunities exist between and talent. And then the last one, which I'm very excited about, is intergenerational teams and moving to a skill-based organization. Because I think we've lived in a world where quite often people sit there with rank and tenure versus skill and talent, right? So a lot of the younger generation is very familiar with tech. They've grown up with it. We've seen it ourselves with our children or somebody else's children. We had somebody over the other day with a 3-year-old who was swiping the television, because that they thought, anything that's a screen works that way. And that was, but just embracing, that kind of tech is really important. But then how do you put that into the organization? That's where the skill-based organization comes in. Find the right people and kind of train them up and have these kind of mixed teams, because they'll learn from each other. There is nothing more important in this transition than learning from each other, because every generation sees it in a different way and uses it in a very different way.
Yeah. And Sarah, anything you want to add to that?
No, but I think we
did cover quite a lot there.
Yes, you did. You covered all the ground, but I think we have a question coming in on the chat, Darren. I don't know if you saw that.
I can see it. Yeah. So when it comes to driving innovation, who should be responsible for making it happen? Who wants to take that one on?
I can start with that one.
Sure.
So, the answer is innovation is an everyone job. And the world's most admired companies actually agree. So again, going back to our research, the majority of them say that responsibility for innovation is shared across the entire organization, not just with senior leaders. And they're really making an effort to empower people and to create the conditions for innovation, deeper in the org. And I would just say, in my work with clients, I see when organizations kind of assign innovation to a chief innovation officer or to the R&D function, right? They really lose out on the value that can come from other parts of the organization. Darren, the other interesting finding from our research on this topic is the notion that the world's most admired companies really value cross-functional teaming. So pulling people together with diverse backgrounds and experiences to go after some of their biggest challenges or some of their biggest opportunities. And it really gets to what we call at Korn Ferry kind of diverse by design teams, and this notion of inclusive innovation. And, I think it's worth noting that a lot of the research shows that if you can get really diverse teams in that idea generation phase, you're always going to end up with better thinking, more breakthrough ideas than you would with a more uniform or more homogenous team. So I think the two takeaways for those who are listening, try and give everybody an opportunity to innovate, make it safe for them to do so, safe for them to fail, and then really think about how you can be inclusive in the innovation process, because it really does pay off.
We have got a few more questions, but I won't ask them quite yet. I'm going to come to them in a minute. So hold still. Sorry, Will, did you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I think it's also innovation. It's important how you define innovation in an organization as well. I think a lot of people have innovation as, a new product or a new service. And of course, that's how it's most recognized. But you can also innovate in the way you drive your cost down, the way you drive your pricing, the way you go to market. So I think innovation is a much broader skill set. That's why Sarah is correct. It's owned by the entire organization, it's owned by every function. And I know lots of organizations have a title as Chief Innovation Officer. But, I think it needs to be part of the DNA of any company that wants to pursue growth.
Absolutely. So when we're exploring new tech and ways of working, what's the best way to protect and improve those employee experiences? Sarah, do you want to kick off?
Yeah. Well, Will mentioned earlier, that some of these developments around AI and tech really are creating some unease for employees, and that is absolutely the case. And I can tell you that if you're trying to drive growth, having a disengaged employee population is not a good formula for success. So, we've even seen research that shows that companies with engaged employees drive revenue 2.5 times what companies with less engaged employees produce. So it really is key. And I think there are a couple things at play here. So, first of all, there is so much misinformation out there about AI and tech, and so many misperceptions that a lot of employees in our own organizations are kind of clinging to, right? So there's just some foundational education that needs to take place. One of the things I always point to is the concerns around near-term job displacement, right? And actually, if you look at the research, there are quite a few different sources that say really the impact on jobs due to AI is going to be neutral through 2026. And that's comforting for folks to hear, right? So I think education is a key piece of it. The other thing I would say is helping to kind of reframe AI from something that employees stand to lose from to something that they stand to gain from is really critical. So it gets into the what's in it for me. And, how is AI going to make employees' lives better? Will they have less work or less of the work that they don't love? I think from an employee experience perspective, AI is going to create opportunities for a lot more visibility around internal mobility. So I'm not crazy about my job right now. I really want to try something in a different part of the organization that becomes easier with AI. We've also talked a lot about personalized coaching as one of the things that AI might provide to help employees advance their careers. So there's a great value proposition to employees when they really embrace AI. Then, Darren, just the final thing I would say that I think is really critical is people are worried about what they don't understand. And so getting employees exposure to AI and tech ASAP is really important, right? Take the mystery out of it, take the uncertainty out of it, get them together with their team, help them to brainstorm around how they can start applying it to their day-to-day work. And all of a sudden, you'll start to see a mindset shift. And the more positive experiences you can deliver with AI, the easier you're going to create buy-in at large.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to be that people are more in fear about what it might be as opposed to what it could be from an opportunity perspective. So absolutely. And Will, I know you've got a point of view on that one as well. What did you want to say?
Yeah, it was just merely an example that I came across in one of our clients recently. So they obviously have the challenge in terms of driving employee experience and what's tech going to do to this. And actually, one of the things that they've done to enhance it is they've introduced tech coaches. So where the younger people, if you like, in the organization, very, very, capable in tech, working with some of the more senior leaders. And that has two benefits: to really demystify what this tech could do and how it works. Because a lot of the senior leaders, quite often, they don't have time. They spend a lot of time in meetings. They don't really have time to take 2 or 3 hours to kind of familiarize themselves with some of this new tech. And some of these tech coaches, they can request them in this organization, and they come and spend a couple of hours with the senior leader, one to obviously talk about tech and, how it works and what it can do for them, the nuts and bolts of it. But equally, it gives these junior people exposure to the senior leaders, and the conversations flow from there. And quite often, it turned in a couple of cases to a reverse mentoring relationship as well. So it started with a tech exchange, and it ended up into a reverse mentoring role. So I think, it was just an example that I thought was worth sharing.
I love that point. So I'm going to get the team to throw us a question. So would you like to pop it on the screen, people? This is from Julia. So what about the human element? How can people be more effective through tech remotely? You mentioned skills. What about the importance of soft competencies? Don't know who wants to take that one from Julia. Don't jump in one at a time.
No, I was trying to formulate the answer in my head for a minute. So
it's tough. It's like you get a long question and suddenly you're on the spot, and it's like, oh my God, I need to think this through first. It's not as easy as that. But anyway, Will, did you want to go first, Will? Or?
Yeah, I think the importance of the soft competence, of course, it's super important, right? Because it drives, there are the cultural elements. There are, people also on how self-confident are you. All these kind of softer competencies that people have, they make it quite difficult. So when, we've done a lot of work on leadership and looking at, for example, the digital fluency, which we'll be talking about later. And it's all about the soft skills almost there, because I think a lot of us have the hard skills. It's not we growing up with these technologies. So we can learn them, we can bring them in, but actually embracing them, the soft competencies are much, much more important in that context.
Absolutely. Oh, go on. I can see you.
Oh, no, I was just going to build on that and say, I think organizations do need to give equal weight to the technical skills and the behavioral skills. And some of the ones that we've been working with a lot of our clients on are things like situational adaptability, managing ambiguity, nimble learning, strategic mindset, ensuring accountability. All of these are things that are going to take on, I think, a slightly different meaning. And a variation based on the way that work is changing and kind of the way that AI and digital are transforming how work gets done.
Right. Okay, and I'm going to just throw this one out to our audience, get them working a little bit. It's all right then putting them all your way, but we want them to work too. So now all of you have heard a lot from Sarah and Will. So what's your opinion? I think we all agree it's pretty obvious it's not tech or talent, it's tech and talent. But if you were going to put a percentage against those two, how would you split it? Is it straight down the middle, 50-50, or would you put more against tech or more against talent? So put those thoughts in the chat. Yes, it can be very individual, I suppose, but it'd just be interesting to see what everyone out there sort of thinks. So that's one for you out there. Going back to our questions, it can't just all be about the talent involved in execution. I'm sure leaders play a big part in getting that right. So Will, can you tell us more about the digital fluency and the leadership style needed from leaders, but I guess also the board to ensure success, I guess?
Yeah, I think, Darren, it's a key factor, right? So I think digital fluency is a term that is more and more used in organizations at the moment. And we're doing quite a lot of work trying to measure what that digital fluency is. Again, not always that easy to kind of measure digital fluency. And we've done it for various large organizations, and it is not surprisingly, digital fluency on the top table, and especially in the boards, is well below, let's say, the 50% mark. Some of our clients are now insisting that the digital fluency level in their C-suite and in their boards is at least 50%. So bringing a lot more of that tech leadership into the boardroom, into the C-suite, to make sure that is a focus area and really well understood and therefore driven as well. But it is not just about the digital fluency. It's also about having the right mindset. It's not just about the skill; it's about the right mindset as well. So as we enter this more tech-heavy world, it's about the change-ready mindset. So being ready to kind of embrace that change and not be scared to learn from mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. In the tech world, not always, but mostly, if you make a mistake, it can be rectified much quicker than in the old traditional world, if you like. Try it with a change. Try it, because if you try it, even small steps, you'll see great results. You suddenly see unexpected results, and you learn all the time. So trying is quite important. It's all right to have friction. Let friction exist, because it leads to a better outcome, to better ideas, to better innovation. There can be difference between people. That's fine, because that will fuel adaptability. If there are differences, that's fine. And again, don't wait too long, because the longer you wait, the quicker this technology, the further this technology evolves, the bigger the gap that you have as well, the bigger problem you're going to have as an organization. Sure. And when you're a change-ready leader, don't lose the organization. People, they need to keep up with change. They need to feel comfortable with the change that they're going through. So keep that in mind as well. But it's going to be a major skill and mindset that our leaders need to have moving forward.
I love the idea of being a change-ready leader. If you actually looked at yourself in the mirror and said, were you that kind of person? I think it's quite a provocative question to ask yourself. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that one?
Yeah, I think for leaders, in addition to being digitally fluent, in addition to being change-ready, one of the kind of capabilities that is so core to driving growth is the willingness to make bold decisions. Yep. And there's a case study that I love. It was actually featured in our Korn Ferry Briefings magazine, I think recently. It's the CEO of Nestle USA. His name is Steve Presley, and it's worth taking a look at if you haven't. But he entered the role in 2018. His goal was $10 billion growth in sales over 3 years, and he needed to decide how he was going to deliver on that. So he actually relocated the headquarters from LA across the country here in the United States to Arlington, Virginia, and only took the top performers with him. And then every additional person that they hired in Virginia had to meet a specific kind of achievers profile. Right. And in doing that, he was really able to up-level the talent and drive that culture of performance. And it's amazing because he's delivered the growth. I mean, growth went from essentially being flat to about 6% a year. So I think it's just a reminder to all of us that sometimes, bold decisions and disruption is is a prerequisite for the type of growth we want to see.
Right, that's great. I've got another question actually. So I'm going to see, is there a question ready to go in the box team? Okay, from Gina. So it's one of our responses to our balancing act. So 75-25, it's easy to be enamored by tech, yet all in perspective. Tech AI tools to enhance the capability, impact of talent. So that's quite an interesting one. I don't know if there's any more of those. James, are you allowed 110%? James, no, you're not allowed 110%. I hate it when athletes go, I gave 110%. James, you're out. You're not welcome back. Any more? And then I would add 65% EI to 40% AI. Okay, that's an interesting thought as well. Really, yeah. That's great. Okay, so as usual, these things kind of seem like we've got ages. Then suddenly there's 3 minutes to go and it's all a rush. So we're going to have to think about starting to wrap up. Any closing thoughts before you sail off into the sunset? Sarah, do you want to go first?
Yes. I think the one thing that's on my mind, Darren, that we haven't touched on yet is just the pace of change as organizations deliver on their growth strategies, right? And we are all feeling so much pressure right now to adopt AI, to adopt tech, to leapfrog the competition, right? Everybody sees the opportunity. And I think it's just worth calling out that, a lot of the world's most admired companies are actually taking a more incremental approach to change. They're not introducing kind of revolutionary new programs or things that are highly disruptive. And I think it's just a reminder to all of us to think about that balance between seizing the opportunity on the one hand, but then also making sure we really have the organizational capabilities on the other, and that we're not stretching our people, our organizations too much as we try and drive this transformation.
Sure. Great. And Will?
Yeah, I think for me, just building on Sarah's point, I think if you look at organizations at the moment, 2024 will be a year that's a little bit different because a lot of companies have grown the last few years, some of it quite a bit based on pricing, especially in the industry that I serve. This year, that'll be very different. Pricing won't be an option. So it's really about growth is going to be the key. You can do that in a number of ways, but I think it's going to be a tough year to really show growth in 2024 because we still have a high cost of living, consumers not spending as much. So you need to deliver some really new experiences for them. And I think tech and the talent needed to operate the tech and drive the tech is going to be absolutely critical. So organizations need to embrace it. But as Sarah said, don't do it too radically because you need to get the organization to come along with you.
Brilliant. Great way to finish. Thank you both. Both been amazing. Lots of food for thought. My head is spinning. And thank you very much. See you again soon.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Darren.
Well, I know where you live, Will. I'll be down there for a summer holiday at some point soon.
You're most welcome.
And as always, thank you to everybody for joining us today. If you'd like more info on the latest research in the growth secrets of the world's most admired companies, check out the link in the chat. We'll also drop a link in the chat to register for our up-and-coming webinar on the same topic. That's in April. And that session, we'll be sharing some additional research on how those organizations are planning for growth in the next 2 to 3 years, as well as hearing directly from some of those leaders. So a great chance to get up close and personal. So please click the link to join. And don't forget to share these sessions with your colleagues. That's what they're there for. Sharing is caring after all. But that sadly is it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Goodbye.